Welcome, brothers and sisters. I'm Fred Stankus with the Avatar Meher Baba Center here in Southern California. And our program is Meher Baba's Artists. With me in the studio are two wonderful artists, Judy Ernst and Will David. And we'll share stories about Meher Baba and also their works of art with us. First of all, with Judy, I'd like to introduce her as being a person who was born in Washington, lived in Oregon, went to Stanford University in Palo Alto, and met a couple people named Eric and Heather Nadell. And in 1972, when Eric and Heather were headed for India, she decided to tag along. So why don't we start our story, Judy, there? What did happen?
Well, you were absolutely right, Fred. I did tag along. I really had only a vague interest in Meher Baba. That is until the time came closer to leave. And then I realized that more and more, perhaps the purpose of the trip was going to be to confront who this man really was. And we finally got to Ahmednagar, where his tomb is, after quite a rigorous plain and overland trip. And I had to confront him, and meeting his disciples, his close disciples, especially his main female disciple, Mera, made me come to the conclusion that if nothing else, Meher Baba was the closest thing that I could imagine to being what I would think of as perfection in human form. I had had no background in religion, and I really didn't even have the language to understand it, to understand mysticism and various concepts about religion. And so none of that meant anything to me at the time. But what did mean something to me as an artist was the notion of perfection in the creation. I mean, for instance, seeing a beautiful landscape and just for a moment having that elevated sense that is truly perfect. And in Meher Baba, I came to feel that he was that, he represented that in human form. He, in terms of his life, his relationships with people, his work, everything about him was something that we could aspire to, as an example. And later on, then, I proceeded to read his works and so on, and came to understand them, and now those sayings and theologies and so on and so forth have become part of my association with Meher Baba also, and they make perfect sense to me now, but they certainly wouldn't have at the time. But in terms of this notion of perfection, it really fits in with the kind of artwork I'm doing now. I would refer to myself as an artist illustrator, and I'm working on a couple of traditional Indian stories. And the one I'm working on now is actually an ancient Buddhist story, which takes place in ancient India. And it's one of a corpus, a large body of over 500 stories that were supposedly told by the Buddha. They're called Jataka tales. And they were told in the form of stories about his life in other incarnations, as perhaps an animal, sometimes another person. But I like to think of these stories as sort of variations on the theme of perfection. They were told by the Buddha to his disciples in order to instruct about how to live a life of courage or compassion or whatever. But they were sort of little glimpses of how a certain aspect of perfection would be seen in a different form of creation. And so I'll show you these, some of my illustrations. Now let me explain how these are done. The text is meant to go here, and this is the middle of the page here, so this is actually 2 pages.
So tilt it so the camera could...
And actually in this story, the Buddha himself is a golden goose. This person here is the Queen of Benares, who has had a dream about speaking to 2 golden geese.
How long did it take you? It looks so fine and intricate.
Well, it is, and it does take quite a long time. They're painted in gouache, which is a form of opaque watercolor. And what I do is I block the whole book in fairly finished sketches, and then I proceed to finish them in color. And it takes me about 2 to 4 weeks to finish one in color. But I hope to pick up my speed soon.
Oh, yes. We'd like to look at all of them. They're beautiful.
This is another one. Again, 2 pages, and here the text will go here and here up in this corner.
So this is an illustrated story.
Yes.
So in other words, if a person didn't understand maybe reading, or he could basically see the illustration and capture what is being conveyed.
And the style of the artwork is inspired to a large degree by ancient Buddhist painting in the Ajanta caves in India. I've had the good fortune of living and traveling for extended periods of time in both India and Pakistan over the years, and so I've had a chance to see a lot of the traditional culture and artwork and so on of the subcontinent. And these are also influenced by Indian miniature painting as well, which is pretty direct in line traditionally from the ancient wall paintings that were Buddhist. In this picture, you still don't see the Buddha yet, because in the story the golden geese haven't yet arrived. Here what's happening is some other geese are arriving who then tell the golden geese about this place. So then they all come. And this is two of the golden geese, but actually still not the Buddha, not who's the king of this flock of golden geese. And this man who's kneeling in front of the king and queen is a fowler who has been enlisted to capture one of the golden geese, and he's telling the king and queen of Benares that he's seen the geese. And then here we finally see the goose king, who's the Buddha in a different life. And he's being spied on by the fowler here through the bamboo.
So the original image, where do they come from? A book? Where do you capture the idea of the depiction?
Well, the text, I used actually a translation from the original Pali, which is, it was a translation done by a man named Cowell around the turn of the century from original stories in Pali.
So in other words, you're not basically looking at another picture and reproducing this.
No.
This is produced from your imagination.
Yeah.
My, it's fantastic.
And then actually the last of this particular series that I've got finished is this one. And here the golden goose king, who's in this picture, who's the Buddha, is just about to get captured in this snare, which you see down here in the lower corner. And then the other geese find out that he's captured, and they fly away in fear of their lives.
Mm.
And the other story that I have done some work on, I won't actually finish it until I finish this Jataka story. It's also a picture, a story from India, but it takes place in medieval Mughal India. It's a Sufi story, retold from the Persian. And it's a mystical story about a very impressionistic young man who goes looking for love, but he looks in all the wrong places. And then finally discovers that he's looking in the wrong places and hopefully learns his lesson, and then the real search begins after that. And I was fortunate enough to be living in Lahore, Pakistan at the time I was doing the original drawings for this, and also I painted this picture while we were there too. And I'll finish the whole series after this other story is finished. This picture finds the young man who's here walking through the fruit bazaar. And he runs into this old woman who gives him some very cryptic advice, which he doesn't really understand. And then he proceeds to look further. This one, these particular ones will be set up a little bit differently, as you can see. The text, can you see the text will go in these little boxes. This is more in the traditional Mughal style of painting.
Judy, these illustrations now, are they done for your sake commercially, or are they done just artistically? I mean, what is your motive behind these? Are you going to have these available for people to purchase from you, or?
Well, hopefully at some point they will be published. I'm not sure what type of publisher will be interested in this sort of thing, because of course they're not specifically geared for a commercial market. I think the thing that guides me most in terms of my purpose is Meher Baba's motto, mastery and servitude. And I think I should explain that a little bit. We in the West, I think, tend to equate the word servitude with servile and think of it as very demeaning. But actually, I think of servitude more in terms of the idea of service. And so, okay, how do you want to follow this motto, mastery and servitude? The most obvious thing is, well, I must serve people. So the first thing that would come to one's mind is, well, I should be a teacher, I should be a nurse, or I should be a social worker or something. But I think there's a much deeper meaning, and that is that if you take your skills and your talents and really turn them over to a higher purpose, a purpose which you feel you can relate to, but also is something beyond yourself, something which is worthwhile, then I think ultimately you gain mastery not only in what you do, but also then ultimately way down the road somewhere, presumably one is united with God, but that's so far beyond what any of us can expect that that's sort of beside the point. But so what I try to do with my art is I have my purpose, which I feel is worthwhile. Having lived and traveled in the subcontinent, I find the culture and the traditional stories really valuable and unknown in the West, and they also have a real strong spiritual content. So what I've done is I've tried to turn my skills over to fulfilling the purpose of presenting these stories in a way which is appropriate to their telling. And whether or not that fits into a commercial context, maybe it will and maybe it won't. I'm not sure.
Well, thank you, Judy. It was really wonderful to have your illustrated art here and have you with us.
Thank you, Fred.
Jai Baba. We'll be right back with Will David and his works and stories in just a minute. And our guest in the second portion is Will David. Will is from San Francisco, and his coming to Meher Baba was a basic silent type of experience, an internal one. He observed people who followed Meher Baba, who were noticeably good people, and it led him to Meher Baba. Will visited India the first time in 1970, and they visited Meher Baba's tomb, and he also was caretaker at the Meher Baba Spiritual Center in Myrtle Beach from 1972 to 1978. And one of Will's famous feelings about his beloved Meher Baba is, in the studio is a special time for living, breathing, moving, and painting my beloved. So why don't we bring Will into his studio so he can describe what he does when he paints his beloved.
Oh, good. Thank you, Fred. In the studio, what I try to find and have a feeling for is what touches my heart. And if something touches my heart, then I know that what the brush has, that brush and the canvas will come out hopefully successfully, and often it does come out successfully. This painting here, what would touch my heart was just being in India, and this actually is a porch. There's a porch here with a person standing, and that porch, in my memory, has such a wonderful feeling, a presence. So I said, now that's a good story to paint. And in reminding, having a sense of that in the studio, then I paint all that you see.
Is that like a halo, Will, in the middle there, around the deity or being?
Yeah, that's a bit of a halo. And there's another person sitting over here. That'd be Mehera, though it's a pretty abstract Mehera. And this here is a doorway, and some that door has put a lot of pink, red, warmth, the feeling of warmth, so you want to go into that doorway.
One of your recent works is The 100 of God, 101 of God. I recall seeing that particular exhibit at the Pacific Asia Museum in Pasadena, and also at the Angels Gate Cultural Center in San Pedro. So, anyway, would you like to basically talk about one of the 101 names of God right here?
Oh, good. This painting here would come from an old ancient, 7,000 years old, called The 101 Names of God, and it's from the Zoroastrian times. And I decided, well, my gosh, that's a wonderful prayer, which is this 101 attributes or names of God. And what?
Go.
This painting here is one of the names of God called Embracing All Creation. So I said to myself, well, I'm going to put a lot of things in that are in creation. So then I said to myself, what will I put in? Here, you'll see the Manhattan Beach Pier. I live down here in the South Bay, so I thought, well, the Manhattan Beach Pier. Up here is a hill that I'm very fond of over in India, like a desert-like hill, a little bit like some of the hills up in the San Fernando Valley on the north side. And way up here, there's an exuberant angel just diving down into all the space. And here you see what would be a wave or a cliff. And further over, which is the sky, I said, well, I'm going to put a horse there, a very elongated horse. And his foot rests on the ocean, which is here. And embracing all creation really would be all of creation. So luckily, with a large canvas like that, I could put a lot of creation in there. And I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but way down here in the lower left corner is Meher Baba there on the beach. Now I'm going to show you another media that I do besides painting is also ceramics. And this would be another 101 Names of God. This would be a bas-relief. This bas-relief is Lord Invisible. So I said to myself, well, what would be the antithesis of Lord Invisible? So a little humor perhaps, I put this mask or face with big glasses on. And there are 101 of these in existence. They're back at my studio. And anyway, I brought this one example for you to see. So.
Right. So Will, in your day as an artist, in other words, does it take quite a bit of motivation? I know you live in San Pedro. I mean, do you rise early and get to work right away, or is it something that comes to you in inspiration, in times of inspiration at any time?
Well, it does come as inspiration. You can get on a roll in painting, and when you're on a roll, that inspiration, you just want to paint more and more, do your ceramics. And I do wake up early. There are other days that I'm not on a roll, of course, maybe even many days. But because I do this full-time, Fred, I pretty much get up and just work right in the studio. And if I don't have the feeling, then I say, what will get my that feeling or that inspiration moving?
I understand you also teach. You taught some children watercolors in the San Pedro Elementary School. What kind of experience was that to you, I mean, as an artist?
Well, I thought being in the studio is all in good, but also to get out into the community and be with the kids. In this case, it was a watercolor class. and they were about 6th grade, 5th grade, 4th grade, and they were just the greatest. The colors and designs that they'd come up with really were very wonderful to see.
Well, you know, in recognizing your personality, Will, it definitely comes through your paintings, because you're always known as the so-called life of the party. You know, everybody thinks of Will, and I notice your hobbies and habits are dancing. You like to dance. You like to nice home cooking, and you like to mingle with people. I know wherever there's a party, everybody's saying, "Well, is Will coming?" because of your nature, and I see you really capture that in your work. And it comes through. Can you relate to us in your trips to India? Did any other people notice that in you too, the Baba's disciples? Did any of them ever comment to you about, Will, David, you are just too much, or something like that?
Well, they do call me a loony. They probably call me loony sometimes. Maybe they'd even call me unscientific. Bao Kalchuri calls me unscientific. And there is that element of whimsy that both is in my brain, which you've perhaps seen, and also I like to put that feeling of the joy of life on canvas, and somehow get that feeling on the canvas or in the ceramic piece.
I notice the colors you choose, they're bright, or maybe it's just the way you put them together.
Yeah.
They have a feeling of alive living. And so there's 101 names that are depicted on canvas. And this one again is called?
This is Embracing All Creation.
Embracing All Creation. And what are some others?
Well, another one would be Endless Bliss.
Endless Bliss.
All Powerful. And I was just going to also say that not all the canvases I do are the 101 names of God. For instance, I'll do a whole series of paintings on the song Begin the Beguine, and take one of the lines of that very long song, but beautiful song, and make a painting for each line. Such as I painted a painting, it brings back the night of tropical splendor.
Oh my, that
would be the theme.
We've got to see that sometime. That must be just fantastic.
Yeah.
So anyway, Will, do you have any particular favorite, you could say, artist that you have followed in your life, or is it just your own style? I mean, your training is derived through what's particular?
Well, actually, my training is in ceramics. In high school and college, I did a lot of ceramics, and in college, then I would do more painting. And there's not any particular artist that I seem to really be touched by. Many of them I'm touched to some extent, but I do like Alberto Giacometti, who doesn't look at all like my work, but I like his real character and respect and love for life.
I noticed I asked you a question earlier, basically is why I do what I do. And I like what you answered. You said, I love it. I communicate easily in art. And well, you certainly do. And I love your quote too, love life to the fullest. And I thank you, Will, really, for being with us and sharing your story and your art with us.
Well, my pleasure.
Thank you so much. And it's been wonderful to have you with us for another Meher Baba program. This theme has been Meher Baba Artists, and we hope to definitely meet with you soon in the future. And we're planning a program with holistic healers here on the Meher Baba program.